This is about empowering the potential of entrepreneurs.
If you're an entrepreneur and you're not taking advantage of an event like this, you're not doing it right.
You're going to be able to see people you are interested in hearing about, their journeys, how did they build their companies.
The one thing I would say that you could walk away with is an immense amount of insight.
You're getting probably 100 years worth of entrepreneurial experience from people who've done it.
If you're going to be a great entrepreneur, you're going to be curious. And if you're going to be curious, this is a great environment for curiosity. This is about empowering the potential of entrepreneurs.
If you're an entrepreneur and you're not taking advantage of an event like this, you're not doing it right.
You're going to be able to see people you are interested in hearing about, their journeys, how did they build their companies.
The one thing I would say that you could walk away with is an immense amount of insight.
You're getting probably 100 years worth of entrepreneurial experience from people who've done it.
If you're going to be a great entrepreneur, you're going to be curious. And if you're going to be curious, this is a great environment for curiosity. This is about empowering the potential of entrepreneurs.
If you're an entrepreneur and you're not taking advantage of an event like this, you're not doing it right.
You're going to be able to see people you are interested in hearing about, their journeys, how did they build their companies.
The one thing I would say that you could walk away with is an immense amount of insight.
You're getting probably 100 years worth of entrepreneurial experience from people who've done it.
If you're going to be a great entrepreneur, you're going to be curious. And if you're going to be curious, this is a great environment for curiosity. This is about empowering the potential of entrepreneurs.
If you're an entrepreneur and you're not taking advantage of an event like this, you're not doing it right.
You're going to be able to see people you are interested in hearing about, their journeys, how did they build their companies.
The one thing I would say that you could walk away with is an immense amount of insight.
You're getting probably 100 years worth of entrepreneurial experience from people who've done it.
If you're going to be a great entrepreneur, you're going to be curious. And if you're going to be curious, this is a great environment for curiosity. This is about empowering the potential of entrepreneurs.
If you're an entrepreneur and you're not taking advantage of an event like this, you're not doing it right.
You're going to be able to see people you are interested in hearing about, their journeys, how did they build their companies.
The one thing I would say that you could walk away with is an immense amount of insight.
You're getting probably 100 years worth of entrepreneurial experience from people who've done it.
If you're going to be a great entrepreneur, you're going to be curious. And if you're going to be curious, this is a great environment for curiosity.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. We'll get started in just a few seconds. If everybody could start to take your seats, we'll get started in just a few seconds. Thank you. Again, we'll get started with our program in just a few seconds. If everybody could just take their seats. I think we're good. Ready to go? Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eric Weissman, the Executive Director of Next, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 6th Annual Next Venture Pitch.
Recording in progress.
things look a little bit different this year. First of all, I'm new. Secondly, we're back to holding an in-person event. Thanks to everyone for their patience and compliance through this process, and a little understanding goes a long way. But regardless, we're back with the Carolinas' premier venture event, which offers a springboard to Venture Atlanta, which is a highly coveted stage and a great partnership that we've forged with them over the years. So first, just a little bit of housekeeping. The exits are at the top of the stairs and at the base of the stairs. There's restrooms on this floor and on the floor beneath us. We've got breaks planned throughout the program, but if you do need to make or take a call, please just be quiet. Keep in mind the program is still going on without you. One thing I've noticed in my short time here, I've been here for all of 3 weeks, is this thing called Southern hospitality. It's this tendency to make everyone feel welcome and comfortable and at ease. And I would look for that same Southern hospitality to extend to wearing masks throughout the event, throughout this portion of the event. And please make everyone feel comfortable. Keep your mask on while seated in the auditorium and in the conference center, unless you're actively eating or drinking or on the stage speaking. So thanks for your patience and understanding as we all navigate through these precautions. So, the agenda. We've got 8 finalists today vying for the coveted Judge's Choice, which will mean a fast pass to the stage at next month's Venture Atlanta main event, October 20th and 21st. Those finalists will be right here, facing individual panels of judges. Each panel is different from the rest, and allowing us to get a backstage pass and really learn about what's going through an investor's mind as they consider investments, and watch how founders have to think quickly, know their stuff, and know their business inside and out. So far, we've had nearly 100 applications. We've had a selection committee of 7 folks. Anyone on the selection committee want to raise their hand? Folks, about 7 people here. Thank you for your help. We've also had some particular help from students and their professors at Clemson University. You'll hear about some of that firsthand real-world work these students got and see it on display here, and we'll see how well they did at selecting. So we took 30 semifinalists. We narrowed that 100 down to 30 semifinalists. A third of them were from North Carolina. A third of them were from the upstate here in South Carolina, and a third were from the rest of South Carolina. So today, we're narrowing that 8 down to 3, then down to 1, who will go on to Venture Atlanta in October. We'll also have a couple fireside chats, some short videos of other startups we thought were too good to pass up. It's going to be a fast-paced afternoon. So we do have some room set aside if an investor wants to pull a startup aside for some one-on-one questions. Those are going to be up in the back of that corner of the conference center. And then that room at the top of the stairs we're referring to as the Judges Lounge, a place where I can find you if you're up next. Also some seats reserved down here for the judges and panelists and presenting founders. Remember, if you do leave to make a call or answer an email, please use your judgment and use your inside voice. So events like these don't happen without sponsors, and the months and weeks leading up to today wouldn't be possible without them. I want to give a shout out to Clemson University, our partner sponsor. I was talking with Shantavia earlier today. Anybody else here from Clemson? Thank you. Thank you for your sponsorship. SCRA, our headline sponsor. I believe Bob Quinn, Steve Johnson, Matt Bell will be here. Copus, the happy hour reception sponsor, which is at the AC Hotel immediately following. Elliot Davis was the sponsor of Selection Night at Yeehaw Brewing. GADC, the Greenville Area Development Corporation, was our Leadership Series sponsor. That was a packed house this morning. And then GLDC, Greenville Local Development Corporation, was our gold sponsor. And Hughes Development, JP Morgan Chase, and Knoll Ventures, thank you all for your support. A special shout out I want to make to the next sustaining supporters, the city, the chamber, the county. Thanks for your continued support of our organization and entrepreneurship and innovation in the Greenville area. Any elected officials here today? If so, please wave so we can thank you for your service. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to have Shantavia Johnson, the Associate Vice President for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Clemson, come to the podium, kick things off with the introduction of our first speakers. Shantavia?
Way down. Hey, everybody, and thank you so much, Eric. Clemson is thrilled to be back as the title sponsor. It's great to be in a room with other people. I enjoyed the event last year via Zoom, but this is really nice. And we are really, really excited to be here because we so deeply value our partnership with Next. As a land-grant institution, many of you know, Clemson has a commitment to support the entire state of South Carolina, and that includes partnering with leaders around the state, including Next, to both facilitate new entrepreneurship by cultivating existing talent and then also attracting new talent to the state of South Carolina. And we really want to connect our faculty, our staff, our students to South Carolina's entrepreneurial ecosystem through things that we do in-house, like our Spiro Institute, our MBAE program, which is in this building, and the Design and Entrepreneurship Network. We also want to facilitate tech transfer and research opportunities with entrepreneurs through our research foundation. We believe in the power of innovation at Clemson, especially through inclusive entrepreneurship. Eric said something to me earlier as we were getting ready for this event, that there's no wrong door into the entrepreneurial ecosystem. It's just that everybody should have a way in. And that's something that we believe at Clemson too. As one of my friends, Arlen Hamilton, the founder of Backstage Capital, says, it's not just about helping people, it's about reaping the benefits of an untapped ecosystem. And so I appreciate, Eric, your commitment and Next's commitment to that. Our region and our state are filled with talent, and the support that Next provides is critical to helping shape and develop and mold that our state's talent. Venture Pitch is just one of the many ways, obviously, that Next makes an impact, and we're glad to be here to celebrate another successful event. And so with that, I am thrilled to welcome to the stage Rodney Rogers, who is the former CEO of Virtue Stream and now the co-founder and general partner at Blue Lagoon Capital. Rod has the distinction of leading 2 back-to-back unicorns with billion-dollar valuations. Alan Tatel, who's from Nora Mosley Partners, has said that in over 20 years of investing, Rod is the best CEO he's ever worked with. So we're in for a real treat. Joining Rod will be Alex Estevez, a venture partner at Excel, to discuss leadership, entrepreneurship, and investing for success. So please help me welcome both of them to the stage.
He's in charge. Perfect. Yep. Test. All right.
Rodney, we're so fortunate to have you here. Thank you. Welcome.
Oh, it's great.
You know, you can't always see greatness like if somebody's 7 foot tall, you might guess they're really good at baseball or basketball, but you know, it's hard to look at entrepreneurs and figure out who's great. And I think you're going to discover today that we are in the presence of greatness. Rodney is really a fantastic leader, a fantastic man, and that's independent of his accomplishments. So you'll discover as the conversation goes on. So welcome. It's good to have you. Rodney has been in the press. He had a big exit, Wall Street Journal, ZDNet, $1.2 billion exit to EMC. It's a storied career. But before we do that, we're going to go into your life before you were famous. So start early on. Where did you grow up, and what was it like? Just give us a little bit of a backstory about where you grew up.
Yeah. So good morning. It's great to be here. I come from absolutely no pedigree. I grew up first person on either side of my family trees to go to college. My dad was a merchant marine, a World War II era guy. So I grew up in a very blue collar home. When it came time to graduate high school and sort of consider what was next, my parents just didn't know. So sort of sort through that myself, but I look at that as a great gift. That was something that fueled me and really helped give me something to aspire to kind of break out of that pattern and whatnot. And I kind of use that as my own chip, if you will. I think everybody needs a chip on their shoulder to sort of ultimately get the most out of themselves. And
early on, was there a moment where, in hindsight, it was a signal to you that of future success as a leader or as an entrepreneur? Was there a teaching moment at an early age that signaled to you that this might be actually what I do?
This is probably when we should have scripted this, because Alex and I don't script any of this stuff. I can't really think of this eureka, soundbite moment here. I always felt the burden of responsibility to kind of organize and I guess lead people in whatever endeavor, would do. I mean, I had some crazy jobs as a kid, I had construction, and I parked cars at a hotel and, worked in a toy store. So there's really no pattern there.
Yeah.
Other than, I kind of had to do whatever I could do to earn the money to get through school. I played sports when I was a kid, and, I had a few athletic scholarship opportunities to go to college and play football. And ultimately I decided not to take them and to go to a place I could drive to, because I was sort of a little too analytical at 18 years old. I sort of knew there's a very low probability I'd earn a living, that way. And so, was able to kind of navigate through that and make some good decisions early, and ultimately it was fueled by, a desire to be able to take care of myself, care for my family, that kind of thing. I had some family obligations, as a kid that you don't usually have as an 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid. So that also, again, I look at that as a gift, not a burden, because it really helped, motivate me to do the things I needed to do.
That's part of the chip you're just describing, that drive that really helped kind of propel you through your career.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and where do you think that came from? I mean, is it intrinsic, or is it part of your experience?
I had two really dysfunctional little brothers. They needed guidance. They needed help. So maybe it was just, sort of the context of the family setting I was in, kind of coupled with my own ego and, my own desire to be successful ultimately.
So you went into your professional career. Eventually, the road led to VirtuStream. You did not start VirtuStream, but you were there early on. Describe what that was like, and why was that important to you? Why did you say yes to that opportunity?
Well, I was a co-founder in VirtuStream. I just didn't go into the business full-time day one. I was a chairman coming out of a couple of prior ventures. Depending on how you count them, VirtuStream was either 2 or 3. We sold my first company to a public company. My first company was Adjoin. It was kind of an IT services play that was back in the 2000 era, and when everything was kind of an e-business something. And we felt that, this brand new revenue channel called the internet would rationalize, and all the craziness would burn off, and you'd have to be able to do a lot of the hard things like automate supply chains and things of that nature. So we kind of focused on a vertical model in that space when everything was a horizontal model. Sort of a common theme, and when I'll refer to the word we, I've had a co-founder my entire career, a guy named Kevin Reed. If you can find a great co-founder, I would highly encourage you to do that. They're hard. It's hard to come by. It's hard to make it work. But if you're fortunate enough to find somebody who's smarter than you and has a lesser of an ego than you do, hang on to them for dear life. It'll be a great run for you. We kind of got through that deal, and we did a cash stock deal to a public company, kind of a mid-cap services firm. And so that had its own life because it essentially extended the venture-backed Adjoined equity, another turn through the public markets and whatnot. I was the CEO and co-founder of Adjoined, and then the CEO, or the COO and the named successor of the CEO of this public company. And we ended up selling that to Capgemini as well for coincidentally $1.2 billion. I had much less to do with that than the second one, or than VirtuStream. But ultimately, I was, after I shook my way out of Capgemini, this was 2008-ish, 2007. And so Kevin and I decided we were going to take a year off. We're going to do nothing for a year. It was in my early 40s. And that's when I discovered I wasn't very good at that. I through the whole Adjoin Cambay cycle, I had sort of fantasized every day about it all being over with and me being able to do nothing, you know. And when I got there, it was this incredibly anticlimactic feeling, and you know, almost, you know, you discover your own insecurities and your own vulnerabilities, right? My kids were all in school all day. I didn't get to hang out with them too much. I didn't understand daytime TV, just didn't get it, and I wasn't that good at golf. So Kevin did a much better job. My co-founder did a much better job. He was kind of in the CTO role through that whole first run, and he bought one of those Ferraris that you can't drive over the street. You have to like load it on a truck, and they take it to a track and all that stuff. So we were 3 weeks into our retirement year, 2008, and I called him up, and I said, you know, so Kevin was in Montreal, and he was on a golf cart getting trained for how to race this track. And that's apparently something you got to pay a lot of attention to, right? Because they tell you what turns you have, what things you have to do around what turns. You're going 200 miles an hour in these things. So I called Kevin up, and I was like, you know, dude, we got to do another one of these things, and this cloud computing thing looks interesting. That was literally the exact sentence. And he was so distraught to get that call, because he was like totally happy, you know, taking this year off. We were 3 weeks into it. He was racing. I was sitting home stewing. And he missed some critical instruction, right, to go around this turn. And because he was just, you know, he's pushing back. He was like, it's like 3 weeks, man. Are you crazy? You know, kind of thing. Anyway. He crashed his car the next day, this Ferrari, and it was perfect because he totaled the car and he was fine. So we started to put the business plan together for VertStream in the second half of 2008, and we incorporated in January 2009. He went into the business first, full time, and then I came on shortly thereafter.
Right. Yeah.
I was chairman and CEO of that, and he was CEO, CTO. We kind of overlapped on the CEO title, you know, in the middle part, I'd say, and then I took it in the end when we sold it to TMC and up to Dell Technologies.
Right. And one of the things that's impressed me is just your discernment, your business judgment, and that comes from, you know, years of experience and making mistakes, right? Yeah. And so early in those years, either at VertiStream or before, what are some of the common mistakes that you experienced, that you did, that you see repeated either as an investor or amongst entrepreneurs?
Man, I tell you what, I've made plenty of them. I've got a lot of scar tissue in that regard. You know, when I was a young guy, I would take, you know, these older guys that, you know, threw their arm around me and gave me advice. You know, they'd say things like, you know, think before you speak and slow down, you know, and things like that. I took that as a total sign of weakness on them, not me, right? Yeah. You know, I was just this impetuous and impatient guy going through life. So I'm very conscious of that as I sit here at 55 years old, you know, being asked for, you know, my advice on how to build companies and how to navigate successful, you know, exits and outcomes and such. But yeah, you know, my first go around, you know, the probably two things I misunderstood or you know, really didn't have the respect I needed to for. First was managing my board. You know, I thought that was just something. I thought a board meeting was something that happened once a quarter, and I didn't really understand the energy that sort of went into that process, and really ultimately the productivity that you yield by investing in managing a board of directors. Didn't have, you know, I had to learn that, you know, really going. And people would tell me that, and I just sort of went in one ear and went out the other. I'm a very performance-oriented, detailed-oriented manager. So, and we created these, you know, wonderful performance-oriented cultures in the businesses that we built, where you'd publicly laud the folks that were successful, and you kind of privately execute those that aren't. But I underestimated the impact of culture. You know, I really did. I was a harder guy, a harder metrics guy, more than a softer person. And fortunately, I had some good people around me that balanced me out, that kind of buffed out that edge and helped me, first of all, respect the need to cultivate a culture. Culture, I've seen so many people, attempt to over-define it. It's really, when you're a startup, it's fundamentally a derivative of your leadership's personality.
Yeah.
It just is, And then, as you grow and as you mature and as you get scale, it requires it to take a life of its own so as it itself scales with the company. And, there's so much more to it than, buying breakfast for everybody or buying purple couches or cappuccino machines. There's all that stuff. But all that tends to be relatively shallow technique that, everybody does now. I mean, you've got to genuinely bring together and create the forms of where you as a CEO can articulate transparency. You have to, there's a fine line to walk there as well. Everybody wants absolute transparency into a business. And I mean, there's just fundamentally things you can't give it 100% transparency all the time. It'd be dysfunctional and or not productive.
One of the tough things with founders and entrepreneurs is like the early version of you don't want to listen because
Yeah.
And so if you could go back to the 30-something-year-old Rodney Rogers and before you had a board, what advice would you give to him where he would hear it?
Yeah, I think, people often ask me, what kind of qualities define a successful CEO, right?
Yeah.
And, you hear things like, horsepower and work ethic and, a lot of these common traits. And all that stuff's true, but, horsepower and work ethic is kind of like breathing to me, in venture-backed endeavors. They, by no means do they guarantee success. And together, you almost have to have both to be successful. So, you can work hard and just not get there, and you can work really smart and not get there. But it's other qualities. I think the first thing that I would first advice I would impart to myself that I might actually listen to would be something along the lines of, a little bit different qualities. Persistence is one thing. You have so many days that are bad days. I've been a venture-backed CEO. Now I'm kind of, an active chairman and investor in things and such for 20-something years.
Yeah.
I would say I've only had 2 or 3 years in those 20 years over, again, depending on how you count them, let's call it 4 major ventures. I've had 2 or 3 years where it's just felt like the wind's been at my back.
Yeah.
Like you're literally managing expectations down. You're managing revenue out a quarter,
Right.
You're doing all that stuff. Every other year's been hard, for the most part.
This is such a good message.
Harrowing.
And it's actually a good segue to the next topic, which is the decision, this theme around persistence and this theme around you're going to just be fighting wars and battles nonstop. How do you actually know when it's time to sell? Like with VirtueStream, how did you know, like, what? Okay, I fight. I'm a fighter. I persist. This is part of the life as a venture-funded CEO. How do you know when it's time?
Yes, I think the situational awareness. You fundamentally, we started the process to exit VirtueStream about 1.5 years before we actually did. There was a dearth of tech IPOs. This was early, we exited mid-2015, so this is early 2014. It's quite some time ago now, right? So, we looked at it, and I'm a big believer that great companies get bought, they don't get sold. If you're putting together a process and a book and all that crap, you may have very well have great outcomes if you can, incite, an auction in earnest, but I think that's rarer than more common. So, we were a relatively hot brand, relatively hot property. We were, we kind of started this thing before the word cloud computing. As remarkable as that seems today, I mean, cloud computing is yesterday's thing now, you know. But you know, we started early, and we focused on, again, common theme that we sort of take in all the things that we do is we look for a hype cycle. You know, we look for a macro trend. And you know, you want to invest with the trend. You always want to buy a stock, you know, when it's above its 200-day moving average, not below its 200-day moving average. So you want a discernible macro trend, and then we seek micro trends within that where we can reasonably commercially prosecute it. And in cloud computing, we knew we weren't going to build another public cloud utility that would compete with AWS. This was prior to Microsoft or Google even getting in the business. So we had to find kind of a workload case and solve a different engineering problem, but within the context of, you know, that macro hype cycle trend. And, you know, so early 2014, we were looking at it, that we felt that we could be a public company. I didn't want to be a public company because regardless of our growth success, we would have been a subscale public company, you know, and that's challenging in this space, or in this particular space. But in the, you know, the spirit of, you know, great companies get bought, they don't get sold, you know, everybody loves to hate the banks, but you want the right ones to love you, right? And so there was, again, not a lot of tech companies going public at that time. We got Goldman and Morgan Stanley to kind of bake off, and we selected them to write an S1, which is your SEC filing. You know, it's just what you file with the SEC prior to going public. And I knew when that happened, you know, that the buzz in the ecosystem would start to occur. So we kind of orchestrated this whole thing. There's this one Bloomberg reporter I remember I worked on for like years. He was a cynic and just a tough guy. And he finally, at the end of 2013, wrote an article about how we were going to take this company public, you know, that type of thing. So we had kind of generated some buzz that way. I wanted to write the S1. You can always pull those, you know, and so had the support of the board, and we went out to test it. But really, we wrote that S1 without necessarily the intention to go public. We wrote it to suss out our buyers. And yeah, you know, the first phone call I got was from Pat Gelsinger, the CEO of then VMware. He's now the CEO of Intel and a good friend today.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, we had the great fortune to have a couple of heavyweight tech firms that looked at our use case as a way to actually protect their technology estates and their revenue streams from a public cloud utility like an AWS coming in. So we were looking at that. We were looking at where we were in the hype cycle. You know, at the end of the day, all these cycles mature and multiples compress. And so we just looked at it practically and said, with where multiples are in this space, if we're able to garner this kind of exit, then we could work for the next 3-5 years and maybe to be, you know, successfully grow the company, grow the revenue, and still end up at the same number, kind of thing.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a combination of situational awareness, acknowledging that companies are bought, not sold. You don't run a process per se, but you build processes or events that build that awareness with guys that might care.
Yeah, and awareness for the space you're in. You know, you're playing a game of Titans. You know, if you get in a little earlier in a more novel space, perhaps, you know, you can carve out your own product ecosystem. Maybe you can be the next AWS. That wasn't really going to happen in our situation. So, you know, again, being situationally aware of your environment, that time value spectrum, I'm a real believer in that, you know, and the like. And so, yeah. And being aware of what you can do yourself.
Right. And so I want to pivot to kind of thematic ideas around leadership and entrepreneurship. You're on the other side of the equation now. You're actually an investor. You're involved with a lot of different entrepreneurs. In the remaining 10 minutes or so that we have, what's the most important thing you look for in terms of leadership in companies or leaders you invest in?
Yeah, again, horsepower and work ethic, you know, if those two things disqualify you, you don't get to move to the next conversation. I heard you, I think it was on a video reel that was running, which means as I was sitting up in that judge's booth or whatever, I heard it about 1,000 times over the last couple hours, but curiosity.
Yeah.
I could probably make a 100% or an absolute correlation between curiosity and success.
Yeah.
From that perspective, being a reasonable human being, when you have some degree, when you work really hard over a long period of time, you kind of develop the no asshole rule, right? You're not going to work with assholes. So, and I don't care how beautiful the idea is. It's just this stage of my life, I just don't care. So, just being a functional and a decent human being, and believe it or not, that's not as common as you'd hope it to be, in the entrepreneurial realm, it seems. And then, again, along the lines of that, maybe just a tick more detail, empathy is another, trait you don't see often in this space, especially with, really talented, really smart technical people. Tend to lack that. But man, you talk about this, there's so much complexity in terms of building out a culture and things of that nature. And I've seen that characteristic be very accretive, and at the end of the day. So those are kinds of things.
There are a lot of really successful, smart investors in the room. And also, we've got 8 finalists that are entrepreneurs that are some of the best in the Carolinas. What do you think is the one thing that either in terms of entrepreneurship or investment that they get wrong?
Well, a couple things. Again, this is just my sampling or my experience. Great technologists oftentimes will focus a lot on building a product, and they'll understand, at least in an ethereal sense, whom they're looking to sell it to. But you've really got to ensure that you can tangibly define whom you're going to sell this product to, right? And really how it's going to occur. And is it fundamentally going to be an indirect sales model and something that'll, kind of be this viral thing that'll take off on its own, or is it going to be an enterprise sale and everyone's a grind?
Right.
And again, we got acquired by EMC, largely regarded as the finest enterprise sales force on the planet. This $24 billion public company sold a wide array of storage and server type products, phenomenally engineered products. It was getting disrupted by the public cloud. But, a sales force at scale, product base at scale, super sticky products at scale. And at every sale, they would tell you, anybody in that group, every sale was a grind. Every sale was a grind. So, don't underestimate the need to fully and in a very early way determine how you're going to commercialize this and ultimately scale it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different answers to that from that perspective. But, I would say that's, one of the more common things. People fall in love with products and the development of products. And the sales side of it's really hard.
You mentioned hard. Yeah. We have a slide here on doing hard things. I think one thing that's come through the conversation, and it's just part of your persona, is that you have this appetite for climbing hard mountains.
Yeah.
Like you are willing to do hard things. And I think the best part of the story here is really the hard things you've done in the last couple of years. You want to share that a little bit in terms of?
Sure. And I will say this, if you're building a product to sell in a large enterprise, I've found over the last, I don't know how many years of selling into that sector, large enterprises where technical idealists go to die. There is such a degree of complexity. It's really important to understand whom your buyer is in these large, complex environments you sell to. Last couple of years, I guess, has been crazy for everybody. But I think what you're touching on is sort of my battle with cancer. often tell people the three most terrifying words you can hear when a global pandemic breaks out is "you have cancer."
Right.
So I was diagnosed with throat cancer. I've never been a smoker in my life, and I was shaving in the end of 2019 and noticed like a lump in my throat. It was a lymph node that was swollen. Went to my doctor, who I didn't see near enough, kind of thing, over a lot of years, and he gave me a Z-Pack. He said, "You probably have a throat, virus or whatever." He said, "It doesn't go down 2 weeks. Go see an ENT." Didn't go down in 2 weeks. Christmas Eve, went and saw an ENT. This is 2019. He thoroughly examined me. Said, "I wouldn't even image this. This is just reacting to, probably a bacterial infection or something like that." So that's what you want to hear, right? Go home, enjoy Christmas. It was January. I just your own body just didn't quite feel right. And, I kind of forced my way back into this ENT's office, and, he was almost accusing me of being a bit of a hypochondriac, And I was like, I want to image him, I just let's do this. And so he did one, one was larger than the other, went and had a biopsy, and on March 9th of 2020, the same guy calls me and is like, "Yeah, you have sequoia cell carcinoma."
Yeah.
And, when you get those phone calls, you'll never forget where you are and what you're doing and whatnot. But it was a bizarre week that week. The markets were, well, first off, New York City was like a war zone, because of the COVID crisis. Markets were melting down. I was an active board member on 6 or 7 companies, an active chairman of 3 of them. 100% of them were in some degree of distress, right? When all that was going on. No one I know was kind of had their arms folded and were thinking this was going to pass and be nothing, right?
Right.
And so, you get through that. I ended up, getting a referral to MD Anderson in Houston. And, I remember thinking to myself, when you first get diagnosed, you really don't know anything, right? You just don't know if it had spread into your lungs or, there's all kinds of risks for the type of cancer I had. So that first week, it's just, you're just trying to stay sane. You're trying to, communicate to your kids, your family. It's just really tough. But you sort of get through that. And, my next thought was, how am I going to interface with the healthcare system every day for, I had this treatment plan defined. I went to MD Anderson. I wasn't a surgical candidate because it was bilateral. It had spread to the right side of my, so I had a 2.5 centimeter tumor in the lower oropharynx, which is kind of like the back of your throat. And this was a common virus associated cancer. So I consider myself this incredibly fortunate guy my whole life. I got a bit unlucky with this. This was just something that went weird.
So you beat cancer too. That's part of the
story.
Well,
yeah, you're always, for anybody who's been through it, you kind of bristle at the word beat. Right. It's been a year, and in October will be a year and 4 months. So after you go through cancer treatment, and what I was saying earlier, I was thinking, how over this treatment period am I going to interface with the healthcare system every day and not get COVID? And what do you do if you get COVID and you're in the middle of cancer treatment? Like, do they stop it and this and that? And I remember looking at the doctor, the oncologist, the lead guy. I had radiation and chemo. And I looked at him, I said, what happens if you get COVID through this thing?
Yeah.
And this guy's arguably one of the best head and neck oncologists in the world.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me. He was wearing a respirator. He looked like Darth Vader to me. He was wearing a respirator and it had this, breathing sound coming out because he didn't want to get it from me if I had it, kind of thing. And he just looked at me. He goes, "Just don't get COVID."
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
so
the closing question, I think, is it's actually probably a question for entrepreneurs, but it's actually a question about how you, I don't want to say beat, but how you survived cancer. You mentioned a lot of the chaos at first, a lot of the uncertainty, not sure what to focus on. What did you learn from this process that was a life lesson?
Yeah, so you learn to really value and appreciate, what you have.
Yeah.
Again, they talk about your attitude being so important, and I would have to think it was really true, right? It's hard, but it's true. You want to go through this with courage and dignity, for your kids and things like that, right? So that was on my mind. But, when you are in a chemo ward and you see these little kids in there and things like that, that's, you're thinking, my situation's not that bad, right? I can get through this. And so the first step is kind of like resolving yourself to solve the problem, right? You go through your own personal trauma and distress and, why me and all that stuff, right? You got to get through that pretty quick and be able to focus on getting through your treatment. And I approached it like a business problem. I approached it like I attacked it. Like, there's just so many things you have to do through my particular treatment. Again, many different cancers are very different. But, there's 8 things I had to do every day, and I had to make sure I got enough nutrition so I didn't, 50% of the people who go through the type of treatment I had get a temporary feeding tube. And I just was determined not to do that. I just wasn't going to go there. And so, you have to regiment yourself. And, so it's a lot of the same ways I addressed attacking or solving a business problem. Yeah.
I hate to close now because it's just so rich, and I'm honored to just witness to your brutal honesty and your strength in being able to show your vulnerability. I think it's a testament. That combination is kind of the curiosity, empathy theme you're talking about earlier.
Right.
And we're privileged to be part of that, to be witness to your sharing that with us. So I just very grateful for your involvement
absolutely.
and your openness with us today, and a round of applause, Rodney.
Great. I'm out of here, right?
Yeah. So we are about to go into the main course. I'm going to hand it off here to Eric in a moment, but I do want to have a message for the judges.
You bet.
Take off your kid gloves, right? You're not going to offend anybody. Most of these companies don't need the money anyway. The point of this is not to pick a winner. It's that as a community, we learn more about being a successful entrepreneurial environment to the quality of the questions and the quality of the answers. So a well-placed question is worth a chapter of information. So I'm encouraging the judges to ask the hard questions, and finalists know that it's coming. All right? All right, let's get the show going. Eric.
That was outstanding. Rodney, thanks for your transparency, your vulnerability, and for sharing that story with us. So as we move the pieces around here, we'll get to the meat of our program today, the live Q&A between founders and investors. And like Alex said, we're observers in this whole thing. What's so powerful about this is that this is the interaction that every entrepreneur and investor goes through. The questions we're going to hear from the judges, the investors, are an opportunity for us to learn. So the context here is education. Judges, please be unscripted, be untethered, tell us how you really feel. Now, this is South Carolina, so we're going to be polite, but we want to demonstrate your expertise by asking the real questions. You're going to help all of us out if you not only let us know what's working, but also let us know where we need work. So, our first group of judges are Don Rainey, General Partner at GrowTech Ventures from Washington, D.C., Rodney Rogers, the co-founder and general partner at Blue Lagoon Capital, and Kim Seals, general partner at the Jump Fund out of Atlanta. Come on up. We tried to be clever with assigned seating, but we'll figure it out. And our first founder is from right here in Greenville. So let's take a look at this pitch from 6 a.m. City.
Welcome My name is Ryan Heafy, co-founder and COO of 6 a.m. City. I'd like to invite you to join 6 a.m. in redefining the future of local media. At our core, we deliver a daily email newsletter at 6 a.m. every morning, designed to provide the most relevant, need-to-know news and events in your city. We're politically unbiased, something you probably won't see anywhere else. Our newsletter is a 5-minute read, and it's conversational in tone, just as if you and I were talking over dinner. What really makes us different? We are not in the business of manufacturing content. Rather, you can think of us as the Amazon distribution center for all local content. Like Amazon, we specialize in packaging and distribution, performance and convenience, and most importantly, profitability. And our timing couldn't be better, as traditional local media is rapidly seeing its demise. In just the past 10 years, over 2,000 local newspapers have closed their doors. With journalists displaced, content creation has pivoted to local businesses, nonprofits, and user-generated content. Our consumers are the now generation. They're more interested in consuming content in bed or on the toilet, on a device in the palm of their hands. And advertisers are racing to find new ways to connect. What's most exciting? In every city that we launch, 6 a.m. can achieve over 50,000 subscribers and $1 million in annual revenue with over an 80% gross margin. 6 a.m. can launch in any city in just 60 days and achieve profitability in less than 18 months. Our proven audience development and revenue growth strategy has allowed us to acquire subscribers at $1.20 and return a lifetime value of over $20 per subscriber. 6 a.m. has identified over 350 potential growth markets where we can easily achieve our unit economics. 6 a.m. will leverage our proven, profitable, and highly scalable business model to be the most relevant brand in local media as we expand into 50 cities over the next 3 years. We've already grown into 7 cities with over 275,000 email subscribers and are on track to surpass 500,000 in just the next 6 months. Eager to reach our subscriber base are over 350 active advertisers. These are the leading brands in the cities we serve, and 20% advertise across multiple markets. Our loyal advertisers have maintained, and many have expanded their relationship with 6 a.m. through COVID, resulting in $2.3 million in revenue this year, and ensuring over 100% year-over-year growth going forward. Our long-term agreements, e-commerce platform, and ad network have created a sustainable and diverse revenue stream. We are excited. So how can you get involved? 6 a.m. is actively fundraising and seeking strategic relationships with investors, advisors, and industry-leading partners that can support our growth. There's a $150 billion market in local ad revenue. Let's connect to talk about the possibilities.
Great. And now please welcome Ryan Heafy, co-founder and COO of 6 a.m. City.
Thanks, Eric. With that, I have a quick update to that, but I'll let y'all start with the questions.
You want to do your quick update?
Quick update for everyone that doesn't know. We're here in Greenville. We're excited to be here this week. We're excited to share with all of you that with the support that we've had from our loyal fan base in Greenville, South Carolina, that we just closed on a significant multi-million-dollar funding round backed by very prominent sports and media executives across the country. And are taking that. This year we started trying to double the size of the company. We will be tripling the size of our company over 6 months. That started about 3 months ago. By Thanksgiving, we'll be in 24 cities across the United States. We'll have done $5 million in revenue this year, and we'll be at about 1 million subscribers by the end of this year, bringing on lots of great talent. And many of you in this room, I know, are already supporters of the product, so thank you very much. We're excited about the next steps.
So, I guess what I wondered about, and I know it's a short pitch, but I was an original investor in Living Social, and we'd send out 60 million emails every morning at 6 a.m. And the storyline was partially open rates. And the secondary story for any media company is, who is your audience? Why are they unique? Why is this a really viable, valuable path to an audience, and who is the audience?
Sure. As many of you know, local media these days is really seeing its demise. A lot of private equity is acquiring your legacy print media products. Billboards, TV, print is all evolving. And it's also focused heavily on clickbait, driving you to the local homicide, car accident, negative news, politically divisive topic. 6 a.m. has really carved a niche for itself in avoiding politics, helping to educate and activate the community so that you can better consume and participate in the communities that we serve. And really also focus on driving economic impact, so much so that we're being recruited by economic development entities across the country to help support recruitment, retention, and economic impact in those cities. So really the biggest piece for us is avoiding that political line and really trying to add value to these communities at a time when people are so focused on where they live. There's so much noise in the market, and for you to better experience the cities that you live in, that's where we come in and fill the void. There's great investigative journalists out there. We want to help package it as content creation goes to every single small business, nonprofit, startup in the community. Your voice isn't necessarily getting picked up in ways that it used to. We're here to help fill that void and impact our cities.
So Living Social's audience, Groupon's audience, 90% female. Most of the purchasing power in the American home. Tell us about the purchasing power of the audience.
Our audience is about 75% female, high discretionary income, highly educated, actively involved in the community. We've created a safe place for both readers, but also advertisers. Advertisers now are really trying to align themselves with products that they feel comfortable being around. And we're able to fit and drive all of our local advertisers, but also national advertisers in a way that aligns with the interests of our consumer. But we have a highly desirable consumer both for advertisers and for our community. I mean, we have the ability to get these folks out. We know that when we share a message with them, if you're the nonprofit locally and you're trying to sell tickets, we're going to hit that person and we're going to convert them to buy tickets and sell out your event. That's our role in the community.
So congrats on the business and the traction so far. You started out saying that you were a politically unbiased organization. I don't believe that. I don't believe anybody's politically unbiased. Everything, even down to local news and how a car accident's reported, kind of takes one of two avenues in today's world, it seems. You know, you kind of got the maybe liberal vax track. You've got the conservative anti-vax track. Those are gross generalizations. But how do you, and I understand you don't create content, you distribute content, but even in the distribution of that the collation and the distribution of that content, how do you ensure going straight down the fairway and not having a bias?
A couple of ways. One, we ask our readers. We actually do annual surveys and feedback, and wildly impressive to us is that we stay kind of within about 5 percentage points of neutral, based off of tens of thousands of reader responses every year. But we've really trained and coached and created an editorial ethics policy that actually omits coverage in general of divisive topics. So the best way to not be politically divisive is to not cover it, and to focus more on the things that are happening within the community and how you can experience your community. While we may provide a guide on how to participate in local elections, we're basically saying this is where you can participate, this is how you can register, where you can register to vote, here's the links to the candidates, but we're not editorializing any elements of that. And we try very, very hard, and if we ever cross the line, we're usually corrected. But the best way for us to really know that we're neutral is that somebody from the left and somebody from the right is telling us that they have an issue with our neutral coverage, which usually tells us we're pretty much down the middle. But we try very, very intentionally to always refine our editorial ethics policy to meet the middle. And we have a lot of different opinions. We are not an entirely liberal-leaning newsroom. We have folks from both sides.
You're appealing to the centrist demographic.
Correct.
And the feedback that you get is that that's a profitable demographic and more profitable than, sort of feeding either edge, the stuff that they tend to want. I'm a centrist, by the way, so I'm interested in that.
Our total addressable market size becomes significantly greater by being able to have people from both sides of the political spectrum. You haven't alienated half. And we've also now have a larger demographic at the bottom and top from an age perspective. So whereas TikTok, there's only certain products that can be advertised to that demographic because you're in this lower population set. So we now have left and right, young and old, and we have a larger encompassing body of each of the cities that we represent, which also creates a more equitable opportunity. And you can actually educate people about things going on in their community without them feeling like they're being forced to learn something because of who it's coming from. So we try to participate effectively to establish that balance in the community, and we're finding great traction with that.
So you mentioned that 75% of your audience is female today, and I'm curious in terms of, obviously there's a lot of competing demands for time from individuals who are reading. Have you looked at what it's going to take to cut through the clutter and actually keep those people engaged, and then how do you get to the next million and the next million after that?
Right now, our average reader, I mean, granted, we've only been in existence for so long, but our average reader is with us for about 22 plus months, which is an extremely long time in a newsletter product. So we're working on a lot of engagement, re-engagement tactics to make sure that we retain readers for a longer period of time to reduce the churn. We're very targeted in how we go about pursuing our audience. We know that our audience is this woman named Beth Martin. For those of you who want to learn more about our editorial side, Ryan Johnston, co-founder and CEO, over here handles a lot of our product side after. But we've really narrowed in on who the audience is, bringing those folks into the table, and then adding value. So while we today make our money off of mostly display and content-based advertising, we're looking at loyalty-based membership. We're bringing e-commerce into the media space in a very interesting way. A lot of folks try to take content and community. We've established community, we leverage content to reach them, and now we're layering in commerce to support the local economy. So you'll see some new product innovation from us in Q4 where we get exactly at that and start to add additional value to the consumers locally to support the shop local concept, drive economic impact locally, but also increase our profit margins as a local media company that's sustainable.
So where's the line between you're here to educate us through the content you're pushing us versus you're here to sell to us? And how do you ensure you're not going to cross that line?
We are certainly going to sell in order to keep a free product. So we do balance access with revenue. And also media has struggled so hard over the years to create a sustainable model, which is why a lot of it's failing. So we are working to make sure that we create sustainable revenue streams in ways that aren't tied to the editorial coverage of the product. So while we might be helping to share about the products and the commerce that we're bringing in are local brands. We're not trying to bring in highly controversial products. We don't take political advertising. I mean, we turn down hundreds of thousands of dollars of advertising every year in political advertising. So we are making sure that we're focused on brands and products that help elevate our communities, and we have full decision control over who we allow to participate in the product.
Right. Last question for me. I'll turn back to these guys for any final. We've all seen the stats out there about the declining trust in the media, right? And in fact, there's the Edelman Trust Barometer that shows that the lack of trust in the media is just at rock bottom, right? So how are you differentiating yourself and this product so that your consumers know we're getting some trustworthy content and we will stick around because it's what we want to hear?
I think you gain trust by building credibility. I would venture to guess a lot of you in here read and consume content that we put out there. Over time, thank you. Over time, as we share information that adds value to you and you go out and participate in the community and you provide us feedback and we continue to evolve the product, we've built that trust. And we've now figured out how to do that on a scalable capacity over and over again in each of the different cities. And that's really allowed us to connect with our readers in a way that other brands can't. If you look and track and follow the comment streams on our social media, it's very different than some legacy media companies. And it's because we have really fought to build that trust and to try to differentiate ourselves. And the easiest way to do that is to avoid some of the controversial topics. So I think we found a good niche and a path there, but you're always going to have challenges. And it's a matter of learning from what you put something out there, you learn from it, and we evolve and make it better. So we take everything that we do in our company comes in as feedback is a gift. And that's how we look at everything that you provide to us. We have an open dialogue with all of our readers. Anyone can email our staff any day. Please don't do it all at the same time right now. They'll get a little overwhelmed. But you can email our staff and we reply back to you. There is a real human on the other end of our line. We are not an RSS feed of information. We are there to make sure that we're serving the community to the best of our ability. And anytime we have a detractor or someone who's complaining about something, when they get that real human interaction and establish that credibility back, they're a reader for life.
So I assume this would be applicable in 150 to 350 U.S. cities and towns. What do you think that number is, and what are the gating factors in time and money to get, it's not so much you have unlimited money, no one ever does, but how does this become a real big, dramatic story? How do you get to 500 towns in America and make it work?
We believe right now that within the next 24 months, we should be a household name in all the U.S. cities that we serve. The end of this year, we'll be in about 25 markets. It's very easy for us to continue to scale to get to 50. For this next year, we're going to focus a little bit more on refining revenue in a sustainable, higher profitability capacity to drive additional value to our readers, make sure the folks that we bring in while tripling the company over these 6 months stay. We can launch any city for $250 or I wish. $250,000 and have it up and running in 6 months. We're profitable within 18. For us, we can kind of control the pace and rate at which we grow. There's probably a strong 50 cities that are highly desirable to us to go into. We don't want to go necessarily into 350. But I think what you'll see is we're looking at additional distribution channels and opportunities. We've been pursued by several multi-billion-dollar media companies on what's next, whether that's AI distribution, so like video vignettes of 1 minute or 5-minute snippets of the news in each of our cities every morning that can be syndicated to national TV channels or your local news. So there are some product evolutions and new distribution channels. So we've kind of created the core product. We can focus on it. We can ensure that we do best here. And we can now incrementally add new lines of business that don't conflict with or affect in a negative way our current business model, but increase dramatically revenue potential and profitability going forward. There's a lot of opportunity. Right now, our biggest challenge is probably managing opportunity. There's a lot of potential and folks approaching us that we're quite surprised to see already. And now it's a matter of massaging that for the right time. We're not necessarily at an exit, but we're trying to position so that next year we can go take in that $20 million and maybe we acquire 1 or 2 different folks that help us get to the next level effectively. But right now, we got our heads down and we're rocking.
I'm going to ask this question, being admittedly not a great local news guy. Like my local news filters my wife. She tells me like what the really important things to focus on is. But what's your emotional hook with your audience? You talk a lot about being politically down the middle of the fairway and centrist. I understand that. And I understand sort of the next door model as it relates to, say, a Facebook, right? But what is really the emotional hook so that you get that repeatability, you get that ad revenue pull through? What is it?
If we're biased about one thing, it's about place. We have coined a term, pride in place. It's actually how we select the markets that we go to. We believe that people love where they live and they want to know how to participate where they live. And we think that we've really figured out how to connect and focus on pride in place. So all of our product innovation, the opportunity, the additional value that we bring to our subscribers is focused around pride in place. Knowing that your wife is the core audience and she's going to help tell you how to experience the community, we're making sure that we are feeding her with all the right information so that she feels valued and has opportunity to participate in the city to the best of her ability. And I really do think that we've got there, and that's truly how we selected the next markets that we go to. Charitable giving per capita, retail stores locally that are opening, tracking public sentiment and social media around what's going on in the market, inflows and outflows of people overlaid with our demographics can help us identify a highly successful market before we even go in and open. And we're really seeing that convert in a big way now. So we're having a blast.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you got one more?
No, I just want to call out, I think Eric, Christy, and Alex, this conference is phenomenal. It stands out. You guys punch well above your weight. You do a great job. I'd also like to thank the sponsors, notably Clemson, for stepping up into the major sponsor role. You guys punch so far above your weight. My hat's off to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. A hand for our judges. Thanks, Ryan. Thank you.
From here, you can change the world, and 6 a.m. is doing that.
Great. Thank you, judges. Thanks, Ryan. So now we're on to pitch number 2, which is bubble paper. And we need Mike Becker, Managing Director of VOCAP Partners. Let me change the slide here. So Mike Becker, Matt Bell, Director of SC Launch at South Carolina Research Authority, SCRA, and Jim Douglas, the partner at Fulcrum Equity Partners. We have everybody up here. Awesome. All right, here comes pitch number 2 from Bubble Paper.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Moore, and I'm the founder and CEO of Bubble Paper. In the world where we live today, we are plagued by plastic pollution. Over 10 billion packages were shipped in the U.S. last year in non-sustainable packaging. Packaging that does not biodegrade, can't be recycled, and has a high CO2 footprint. This packaging ends up in landfills as a best-case scenario, or in our lakes, streams, and oceans for hundreds of years. Consumers are voicing their concerns, even returning products to companies that use plastic packaging, and now the government is listening. Here in the U.S., we have cities and states banning single-use plastic and styrofoam coolers. The team at Bubble Paper set out to solve this problem. Through countless hours of engineering and testing, we created the patent-pending material called Bubble Paper. This new material is a core technology in all of our products. It insulates, protects, reduces CO2, biodegrades, and is one step curbside recyclable. Bubble paper is used by the e-commerce companies to protect items during shipment. Compared to plastic bubble wrap, our solution provides the same protection at the same cost and can go directly into the recycling bin. Made with bubble paper technology, paper ice box is a sustainable alternative to styrofoam coolers. Used by meal kit and medical companies to ship temperature-sensitive items, the paper ice box can keep items cold for over 48 hours. Just like bubble paper, paper ice box can be placed directly into the recycling bin and also has a 20x lower CO2 footprint. For e-commerce companies, our bubble paper mailer is a direct replacement for plastic bubble mailers. The bubble paper mailer has been lab tested to show a 30% improvement in mechanical protection, all while providing a recyclable and biodegradable solution. The market for sustainable packaging is growing rapidly. In 2020 alone, the cold chain packaging market grew by 5x, while e-commerce grew 44%. There is a $40 billion annual market for our specific packaging products. For instance, Amazon uses 400 million mailers every year for e-commerce fulfillment. HelloFresh, a leading meal kit company, uses 80 million thermal liner kits a year. Overall in the U.S., 10 billion feet of plastic bubble wrap is used annually. Since launching Bubble Paper in 2020, we have signed a number of early customers. Recently, we have signed a deal with a Fortune 500 company to replace their plastic bubble wrap with bubble paper. Earlier this year, we signed a contract with a medical distributor to replace styrofoam coolers used to transport critical cold items with paper ice box. To support the increasing sales, we've designed and built an automated production machine capable of producing 28 million feet a year. As we scale and grow, we are committed to making better packaging for a better planet.
Great, and let's welcome to the stage the founder and CEO of Bubble Paper, Benjamin Moore.
Good.
All right, we're ready to go. So maybe for a little more context, tell us a little bit about the proprietary nature of the product.
Okay.
And what makes you feel like it's defensible over time as other people kind of catch on to what you're doing.
Okay. We first started forming a lot of different types of materials, and we used Paper is kind of the medium that we grew into. A lot of the IP is focused around how we form the paper, and then utility patent on the form paper, and then utility case of how it's used. So we filed a patent on single-use replacement for bubble wrap as one layer, or also you can layer it up, laminate it, do different things. So we included some of those in the patent as well as use cases of the bubble paper.
Just probing on that a little bit. So how easy or hard would it be for somebody to design around that? And how much protection do you think is afforded just by the patent component? And do you really see the defensibility is built around the patents itself, or do you have other ways you think you can defend your IP?
So we did a couple different ways. One is the machinery. We design and build all the machinery in-house, and so we keep some of that trade secret and how it's done, which we want to continue down that path. The other is through the utility patent, covers how the paper is actually formed in the utility piece of it, but to a certain degree. So there's other indenting paper. If you get a business card, it has an indented aspect to it. Bubble paper has a lot more stretch and shape. So we go beyond just the indented paper and try to capture anyone that's trying to form paper beyond just a kind of a nice indent. So our ratio and a couple of the technical aspects of the patent cover what we're doing plus bigger shapes.
Benjamin, just kind of curious. In the presentation we just heard, we heard CO2 savings. We heard recyclable probably 8 times in the presentation. Right. But at the end of the day, for these companies, these partnerships, it comes down to cost over time, right? So how do you compete against the existing technologies from a cost perspective? And are you able to make traction with these companies on a pure economic level, or do you really have to go towards the environmental element?
So a lot of companies are swapping because their customers are forcing them to. We're actually producing and selling bubble paper to Fortune 100 companies now as a replacement for bubble wrap at the exact same cost. So we're making it and selling it to our customers cost to cost, performance for performance. So we do drop testing, endurance testing, wrapping parts up in bubble paper protects the same as bubble wrap at the same cost, and then recycled again. So. Yeah.
Okay. Just following on that, so if you're able to do that with the manufacturing capability you have right now, what does that speak to in terms of your ultimate cost at scale? Do you feel like you can undercut on price?
Oh, we can in some aspects, because then we'll be buying different types of paper more in bulk. So there is some economies of scale there once we grow bigger. As of now, the way we manufacture the equipment that we currently do is extremely automated. So we've squeezed a lot of the labor aspects and things out. The rest of it would be in material handling, flow in and flow out. So we'll become a very large material handling plant versus just making bubble paper. The material handling piece is where a lot of the added automation would come in handy as we scale.
Continuing on that a little bit, so who do you see? I mean, obviously it's a huge problem. Everybody wants to get rid of the plastic, right?
Right.
So others, I'm sure, are running at it too. They may not be showing up. They may be showing up with other proprietary solutions. Who else is out there doing it?
There's a number of trying to form paper and do different shapes. Some are trying to actually put glue in between 2 layers of paper and create kind of a styrofoam-like pad. That's kind of what Amazon's moving toward as of right now for a mailer construction. So everyone's trying to check the box of biodegradability and recyclability, and it's hard to do both. So some plastics are recyclable, but they can't biodegrade. There are a couple of competitors out there playing in the paper environment, trying to get certain types of papers, and they're doing a different approach of laminating or adding things to paper or expanding it, making it kind of like a hex shape or something like that, and relying on a different structure essentially to cushion the product. And for square foot, the cushioning properties is actually way lower than what bubble wrap is today. So they're having to use a lot more of it. Therefore, the cost goes way up.
Are the bigger guys, the Georgia Pacifics, the Warehousers of the world that have huge distribution in this area, are they doing things like that? And
they do like to provide paper, and Ranpak is a big competitor. Take big pieces of paper and pop into box. If you get a shipment, you'll see lots and lots of linear feet of paper as you're trying to now put into your trash can. That's one way they're trying to solve that problems with cheap paper and just crinkle it down. The problem with that is it's not consistent. It doesn't always crinkle the same, so therefore you still get parts damaged or product damaged in shipment. And so we we identify them as competitors, but they're doing a different approach of just using as much paper as they can. Therefore, they sell a lot more paper. We went more of an engineered paper approach of how do we use the least amount of paper possible and get better performance.
For your customer base, I remember the first time I went into a FedEx store and looked just to take something and ship it somewhere, it was intimidating the number of package options that were available to me. For your customers, is it a case where, there's 2 or 3 SKUs that kind of hit most of your customer base, or are you going to have to differentiate your product and almost have a scale issue in terms of trying to figure out how to meet all the needs of each and every customer that you work with?
A lot of customers have standardized on bubble wrap dimensions, so 250 feet, 12-inch wide roll. If you go into FedEx, there's rolls of that ready to go. So a lot of the customers, UPS, FedEx, DHL, have settled on those types of shapes. So we're going in replacing a bubble wrap that's 250 feet, a roll, and we're doing it in a more compact box that actually is about 4 to 5 times less space than what the bubble wrap would be. So they're liking that. Some of our customers love that aspect of it as well. The fact that we're saving on just the logistical costs or storage there in your store. A lot of FedEx and UPS stores are small, so we actually pack a lot more cushioning protection ability, linear feet per square foot in their store as well. So working with like those types of customers, UPS, FedEx, and things, we're doing more of a one-for-one replacement. We're not having to engineer from the ground up for every single customer.
Talk a little bit about the distribution side of it. I understand going direct up front, kind of prove your point, right? Are there mature distribution networks that are better for you to scale over time, or is it always going to end up being a direct model?
The direct model allows us to better communicate with customers and their needs. We prefer that initially because we're getting a lot of customer feedback on what they may or may not want. Maybe they want 500 feet versus 250 because they see that they're saving so much space. They can save time by not swapping material from the back of the plant. So we like doing direct, talking to customers. The distribution channels are there. We're talking to some that would buy in bulk and then distribute to a lot smaller customers. But we're doing more of an enterprise sale, trying to reach the larger customers at the very beginning.
And presumably those distributors need a product like this. They're going to have some answer to check the box as well.
Yes, and we do have some distributors that are reaching out that want to carry this. We're very selective on which ones we allow to do that, and then we attach minimums and different things to that to allow them to get on board.
Staying on that kind of go-to-market side of things, talk us through a little bit about, it sounds like you've got an inside sales direct piece now?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, and if we all handed you capital and said 2x the velocity of it right now, what would you need to do?
So we do have an inside sales piece. We onboarded some people that have the enterprise background when it comes to sales because a lot of the companies we're reaching to are the FedEx, the UPS, bigger companies that are hard to get in just ground up. So we do that, and we don't have a marketing part of this raise would be marketing to help facilitate that. For the scale and growth, we're bottlenecked now just on the manufacturing capability of what we have today. We're growing and expanding, but there's billions of feet that need to be made. We did a lot of the design and stuff internal for the machine. There's aspects that we can kind of farm out for construction purposes to speed that process up, but then that's where time is money. We'll have to outsource, spend 3x for a machine, but we can get it a lot quicker. So a lot of capital now is to get us where we can actually manufacture and keep up with the orders that are coming in the door. And we're pushing customers out further and further just to catch up.
So say we waved a magic wand, though, and capacity and the ability to deliver the product was not an issue.
Right.
What's the main thing that's going to be the bottlenecks that you'll start hitting on sales, and how do you see that scaling?
So one is just logistics of what we're selling. So we'll have to actually open up, tie that more toward production, but have more than one facility in the U.S. Shipping things is getting more and more and more expensive. So even for us, if we ship something across the country as cheap as just the packaging that our customers are going to use, it makes the price go way up. So being able to have a network of manufacturing plants is going to be critical, cut down logistical costs. So that's going to be part of the magic wand on the scaling aspect. And then sales, we're still trying to fulfill and scale up. There's a chicken and the egg of having the capability, and we're talking to one customer that does meal kits. They need 200,000 paper icebox units a week. So we can't go from zero to that number today. It's going to take time to get there.
I was just going to say, so part of your strategy then is a diversified manufacturing structure. I mean, that's part of your scaling strategy. Right. How do you do the little bit of a catch-22 of your customer growth and your scalability, but also figuring out how you're going to handle your costs as you start to diversify your manufacturing capabilities?
So once we do the like a paper ice box, we onboard a machine, it's about 6-month payback period for that machine. So there is actually the ability to look at a customer, say they need 10 machines, know what that capital investment would be, and then be able to build that in about a 4 to 6 month window, and then a 6-month payback. So we're able to calculate that, figure that out, and that's some of the limitations is getting customers to sign on knowing that they won't receive product for 3 to 6 months.
Is that the toughest part of the business then at the end of the day? Is just scaling manufacturing?
It is a lot of it.
Is it distribution or scaling manufacturing?
Scaling manufacturing is the harder part. We do have customers wanting and needing it. A lot of customers need thermal insulated boxes to ship medical things. COVID was a big hit in that. But when people needed to ship vaccines, they needed to ship them today, not 3 months from now. So we've actually exhausted the supply of styrofoam coolers and things that were non-sustainable is what vaccines and things got shipped in, to where styrofoam companies are no longer really making those at bulk. Cities are banning those. You can't go to Hilton Head and buy a styrofoam cooler off the shelf anymore. So a lot of that is changing where you're looking for the new manufacturers to make eco-friendly cold chain packaging, and those companies are very few.
So it's going to take some capital to pull this off, right?
Yes, and we're...
how do you see kind of the long-term capital needs? I understand you're raising $3 million now. I understand you're raising $3 million now, but how do you see the long-term capital needs of this? It's
we're doing
pretty capital intensive, right?
Yes, and so the good news is we make good margin on the products that we do sell. So there's some cash flow that helps as we're building these machines. When you pay back, you're able to scale that way. We will see milestone investment. So we'd like to get to the $3 million, raise that, get to a point where we can actually execute on some of the orders that customers are begging for product today. With that in the pipeline of adding more capital and a very quick kind of growth rate, it allows us to kind of start to double more on like a 6-month basis and be able to fulfill orders and grow and raise capital almost on a yearly basis.
And going a little deeper into that, so what are the primary drivers of your cost to sale? What kind of gross margins are you getting to, and what are your choke points right now from a kind of supply perspective?
So we actually convert and do all the paper and the production in-house. So it takes a couple of months to source the paper, get it cut, trimmed, converted, and basically that's our WIP, our work in progress material. So that's one aspect of the front end cost. Goes a lot into inventory and getting prepared to run the product. The sales cycle, we have the bubble paper by itself is a very direct replacement, not really a heavy engineering sell. Paper ice box is a thermal protected box that allow a food company to ship their products like a HelloFresh plated, any of those to your house. So they want to do testing, build it, maybe change parameters, size. So it's a very technical sell with indirect and direct labor support that we use for testing the product, building samples. So it becomes more of a sales role and a technical sales role together to close the deal with some of our customers. So that's the way we attack it. It's a very technical sell for those types of customers.
Can you speak to your exit strategy? I mean, is this a strategic exit at some point that you're targeting, or is this a cash flow margins-based business that's going to, PE firm or something along those lines?
So we looked at like a couple of the 3 different exit strategies. The PE group of being an M&A type thing is probably part of it. It's definitely one avenue. We're also talking to some other types of packaging manufacturers that want to kind of buy up certain segments. A lot of them are very active in the market trying to buy sustainable packaging companies to add to their product mix. We see that as the more likely target that will be acquired by one of the bigger packaging companies, maybe like a WestRock or some of the other ones.
Just in the 30 seconds we have left, what's the primary thing on your roadmap other than manufacturing expansion? From a product standpoint, where do you see it going?
So we have the bubble paper products, and Wes has some there. That's the COO. So we have other types of products we're going to continue to make with the bubble paper. Mailers is another one. We have a couple other ones on the roadmap that are really unique, where we'll integrate bubble paper into craft paper, then use that for a daily type of shipping thing. So we have a couple products on the roadmap, one of which we'll release this year, which is kind of exciting for us. And then we'll get to a point where we're just purely manufacturing. Cool.
Great, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Well done.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, judges. Thank you. So we were, as I said earlier, we were so overwhelmed with our responses for this year's venture pitch and the reaction that we got at Yeehaw a couple weeks ago. Thanks again to Elliot Davis for sponsoring that. We really wanted to highlight 4 companies in particular that should be on all of our radars, and we're calling them ones to watch. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this 1-minute video, then take our first 5-minute break. So the first one to watch is a company called 3 Mountains.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm the founder of 3 Mountains, and we make Cerula sparkling tea. We make Cerula with real tea leaves from high elevation Rwanda, where I've been working since 2007. And we are a fair trade certified company. We go beyond fair trade and truly value building direct relationships with everyone who's part of the important supply chain. There are too many sugar drinks in the stores today made with artificial ingredients with little respect for the environment or the farmers. Our consumers are demanding products with purpose that have clean labels and functional benefits. Today, Cerula is sold in over 500 stores and is in the top 3 Amazon listings for sparkling tea. Sales are at 450%, and the U.S. market size is currently at $335 billion. We hope you'll consider joining us in the fastest growing category, better for you beverage.
Great. All right, we're going to take our first 5-minute break. We're going to start right back on time. The next session is virtual. We're going to jump into a live Zoom session, so we're going to start that right on time. 5 minutes.